I'll read it off the screen.
Dear friends, welcome. This is the fourth day of our retreat in place on the Four Noble Truths, August 6th, 2020.
I'm good.
And we're going to start today with a wonderful, wonderful energy chant called Affirming Faith in Mind. Let me find it here. And so it goes something like this with a little energy. I'll do the first thing and then I'll put this up. The great way is not difficult for those who do not pick and choose. When preferences are cast aside, the way stands clear and undisguised. So it has a bit of an energy to it if everybody is okay with that. So if everybody knows their particular order at the sound of the bell, Bill, you can get us going.
Paul?
Yes.
Paul, are the males the thicker print?
I'm sorry, that's right. The males are the thicker ones, so you wouldn't be going first.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
So how about that? Lynn, I would have you going first. So the order here now would be Lynn, Bill, Colleen, and Jeremy. Sorry about that. Yes, so you're absolutely right. The women go first. So Lynn, when after the sound of the bell, and I will say the title of the chant. Affirming faith in mind.
The great way is not difficult for those who do not pick and choose. When preferences are cast aside, the way stands clear and undisguised.
But even slight distinctions make heaven and earth far apart. If you would clearly see the truth, discard opinions, pro and con.
To flounder in dislike and like is nothing but the mind's disease. And not to see the way's deep truth disturbs the mind's essential peace.
The way is perfect, like vast space, where there's no lack and no excess. Our choice is to choose and to reject. Our choice to choose and to reject prevents our seeing this sinful truth.
Both striving for the outer world as well as for the inner void condemn us to entangled lives. Just calmly see that all is one, and by themselves false views will go.
Attempts to stop activity will fill you with activity. Remaining in duality will never know of unity.
And not to know this unity lets conflict lead you far astray. When you assert that things are real, you miss their true reality.
But to assert that things are void also misses reality. The more you talk and think on this, the further from the truth you'll be.
Cut off all useless thought and words, and there's nowhere you cannot go. Returning to the root itself, you'll find the meaning of all things.
If you pursue appearances, you overlook the primal source. Awakening is to go beyond both emptiness as well as form.
All changes in this empty world seem real because of ignorance. Do not go search for the truth. Just let those fond opinions go.
Abide not in duality. Refrain from all pursuit of it. If there is a trace of right and wrong, true mind is lost, confused, distraught.
From one mind comes duality, but cling not even to this one. When this one mind rests undisturbed, then nothing in the world offends.
And when no thing can give offense, then all obstructions cease to be. If all thought objects disappear, the thinking subject drops away.
For things are things because of mind, as mind is mind because of things. These two are merely relative, and both at source are emptiness.
In emptiness, these are not two, yet in each are contained all forms. Once coarse and fine are seen no more, then how can there be taking sides?
The great way is without limit, beyond the easy and the hard, but those who hold to narrow views are fearful and irresolute. Their frantic has just slows them down.
If you're attached to anything, then surely you will go far astray. Just let go now of clinging mind, and all things are just as they are. In essence, nothing goes or stays.
See into the true self of things, and you're in step with the great way, thus walking freely, undisturbed. But live in bondage to your thoughts, and you will be confused, unclear.
This heavy burden weighs you down. Oh, why keep judging good and bad? If you would walk the highest way, do not reject the sense domain.
For as it is, whole and complete, this sense world is enlightenment. The wise do not strive after goals, but fools themselves in bondage put.
The one way knows no differences. The foolish cling to this and that. To seek great mind with thinking mind is certainly a grave mistake.
From small mind come rest and unrest, but mind awakened transcends both. Delusion spawns dualities. These dreams are naught but flowers of air. Why work so hard at grasping them?
Both gain and loss and right and wrong, once and for all get rid of them. When you no longer are asleep, all dreams will vanish by themselves.
If mind does not discriminate, all things are as they are, as one. To go to this mysterious source frees us from all entanglements.
When all is seen with equal mind, to our self-nature we return. This single mind goes right beyond all reasons and comparisons.
Stop movement, and there's no movement. Stop rest, and no rest comes instead. When rest and no rest cease to be, then even oneness disappears.
This ultimate finality is beyond all laws, can't be described. The single mind, one with the way, all ego-centered strivings cease.
Doubts and confusion disappear, and so true faith pervades our life. There is no thing that clings to us, and nothing that is left behind.
All self-revealing, void and clear, without exerting power of mind. Thought cannot reach this state of truth. Your feelings are of no avail.
In this true world of emptiness, both self and other are no more. To enter this true empty world, immediately affirm, not two.
In this not two, all is the same, with nothing separate or outside. The wise in all times and places awaken to this primal truth.
The ways beyond all space, all time, one instant is 10,000 years. Not only here, not only there, truth's right before your very eyes.
Distinctions such as large and small have relevance for you no more. The largest is the smallest, too. Your limitations have no place.
What is not. What is not is. If this is not yet clear to you, you're still far from the inner truth. One thing is all things are one. Know this, and all's whole and complete.
When faith and mind are not separate, and not separate are mind and faith, this is beyond all words, all thought. For here there is no yesterday, no today, no tomorrow.
Great, honey. Thank you. Sorry, I was flying.
So thank you all, dear friends, for your participation in that very wonderful old chant from, I think, 3rd or 4th century. And it has the ability, I think, to help us break down our duality between self and other, which is something we'll be definitely talking more about tomorrow, maybe a little bit today. So dear friends, welcome to the 4th day of our retreat. And today we are talking about the 3rd Noble Truth. 3rd Noble Truth is often stated as suffering can end. But there have been a lot of different ways to look at this, including the ideas that are put about by people such as Thich Nhat Hanh. The first half of the truth is that suffering can end, but the other part is that happiness is possible. People may have some idea or want to know exactly how did we come to these 4 noble truths. How was that arranged? And we believe that it was done by kind of adapting to medicine at the time that is very similar to Ayurvedic medicine now, that each condition has 4 steps to it. The diagnosis, the cause, prognosis, and cure. And in the traditional thing that people had when they started talking about this, they started using suffering. It was the cause, was the disease. The cause of suffering was the 3 kleshas. The 3rd, the prognosis, was very good because the cure was the 4th, was the 8-fold noble path. And this is kind of the way it went to. However, there are some people who have looked at this a little bit differently, including my root teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh. I want to just go through a few alternative if I can find it here. Some alternative ideas about the Noble Truths. So here are some alternative statements. Susan Kaiser Greenland, who is a person who does mindfulness for children. So she has a book called The Mindful Child. And I recommend that if people are interested in bringing mindfulness not only to children, but to your relationship to children. The first insight, life has its ups and downs. Second insight, delusion makes life harder than it needs to be. The third insight, happiness is in reach. And the 4th insight is the keys, which of course is our 8-fold path. Stephen Batchelor, he adds a 5th thing here, which I'm going to talk about tomorrow. And this is the very, very traditional thing out of the Pali Canon. Comprehending dukkha, the idea of suffering, unease, dissatisfaction, that sort of thing. And the second part is letting go of reactivity, beholding the seizing of reactivity, cultivating the 8-fold path. And tomorrow we're going to talk about building the city. So he adds almost a 5th task to the 4 tasks. But more remarkably is what our root teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh, has done in the book that we have called The Heart of the Buddha's Teachings. He has an idea that the 3rd Noble Truth, instead of being the cessation of suffering, should be the truth of well-being. So, and he also feels that that's the preeminent truth. So Thich Nhat Hanh has this sort of thing. He calls the first noble truth the truth of well-being, which was formerly what people might call the 3rd noble truth, that suffering can end. And his second truth is the noble path, which we'll talk about tomorrow, how you kind of do that. The 3rd truth, which was formerly the first, is the truth of suffering. And the idea that would be called the ignoble path, meaning that he would talk about unskillful speech, unskillful action, etc., etc. So I very much appreciate the practice as put out by our root teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh. Happiness is there. Happiness has been, or peace of mind, or enlightenment, or any of those sorts of things, has been a great part of what he has been teaching right from the word go. In fact, he has a whole chapter on is everything suffering in his book to say, no, it's not, that happiness is available. And just as we talked about in the initial part that we said, just because you're a human being, i.e. those first arrows come to you, that's just the way things are, a natural law. It is also a natural law that well-being is always available to you. And if you want to look at it as a very natural thing, however, if you believe in evolution or some other kind of way of being, of how the human race has arisen, well, we are creatures designed to live on this planet. We are creatures designed to eat, develop, grow, procreate, all that sort of thing on this planet. So if we weren't a good fit, quote unquote, to the planet, we wouldn't be here. And the fact that we are a good fit means that there must be something that is useful to be around. That there is always, well-being is always available. And that well-being is always something that we can communicate with. So I'm very fond of Thich Nhat Hanh's reinterpretation of the Four Noble Truths. The idea of well-being exists. Here's my friend Siddhartha. And Siddhartha, of course, I'm not sure if he was cast in this particular iteration of this, but let's just assume that this was a stone tablet, a stone block. The practice that you would do if you were a skilled practitioner or a skilled sculptor would be to remove all the little bits until this part was exposed. And therefore, the idea of your Buddha nature, your enlightenment, your awakening would shine forth. There it would be. And as you notice that most of what we would talk about in regards to being a skilled sculptor involves letting go. It involves removing. And this is our practice. Our practice is perhaps to remove those things that get in our way of our difficulties. And in this way, enlightenment is not only a possible, but it's not a very rare thing. At least according to people such as Thich Nhat Hanh and Stephen Batchelor and Glenn Wallace, these people that have really kind of gotten themselves together in looking at the very, very early teachings of the Buddha. Today, I want to actually give you a few practices about this. So the first thing is, and this has been such a small thing on the surface of it, but I feel it's really changed my life. When you are doing sitting meditation in particular, but maybe also when you're doing other kinds of meditation, including walking meditation, add the smile. I've not seen anybody else, and maybe some of the other practitioners here know of this, but I don't know of anyone else that has that as part of their general meditation instructions. We're all told to sit up straight and follow our breath and do whatever else goes on with kinds of things like sitting meditation. But Thich Nhat Hanh adds the idea of the smile. And that is an idea that even if you are feeling not in the best of moods today, kind of out of sorts, you dragged yourself to the cushion and said, okay, even though I'm cranky, I'm going to go about and do this, that you add the smile. And I think that that's been a really wonderful, wonderful idea. And I think it's been helpful for my particular practice is just to do that. The very simple smile. Mouth yoga, he calls it, and it's just a really terrific thing. The second thing, as we get back to our model on how things go, the I just want to kind of refresh people on this. I'm going to put the share screen up for this. Our very decent model of store consciousness, mind consciousness, and seeds. And we have known that if we take a seed of what are often called unwholesome seeds, such as anger, fear, etc., and that we notice its occurrence, that we actually kind of embrace that with our mindfulness, that we can help resolve our anger. I'm not doing very good on these things today. And that it goes back into our stored consciousness weaker. However, he also says that the idea that we have from the standpoint of positive things or wholesome seeds also change, and they come back a little bit stronger. So in those situations, when we water our seed of, say, compassion or joy, and once again, we bring our mindfulness to bear, embracing it and really paying attention to it. And I'm going to talk about a specific practice related to that a little bit later here. Then that also returns to the stored consciousness, a little bit changed, but stronger. In many situations that people have looked at, for those people who are gardeners will appreciate this particular thing. When people start talking about psychology, not only from a old Buddhist view, but from a view of modern psychology, in many situations, they talk about the eliminating of neuroses, the kind of weeding out of getting rid of those things that cause you pain and discomfort and are causes of that dukkha. That you rid yourself of the anger, that you rid yourself of fear, that you rid yourself of anxiety, and everything will be good. I like to think of that as the idea of being a good gardener. If you had somebody that actually got rid of all of their weeds, got rid of all of the tiny little rocks that were in the way, and you kind of cleared that out, and you had this big patch of brown dirt, and you came and brought your friend over and said, "Look at my garden, isn't it wonderful?" And they'd say, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Well, look, there's no weeds, there's no rocks, it's nice and smooth, it's just great, isn't it? I've gotten rid of all of the bad stuff." But people wouldn't see it that way. In particular, Thich Nhat Hanh and other teachers, including, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about Rick Hanson's model for this, the idea of watering positive seeds is as important as dealing with negative seeds. So in the wonderful book, and again, this is only for people who really are interested in something that might be a little bit deeper, called Transformation at the Basics. Modern title is called Understanding Our Mind, or any of the other kinds of things that talk about this particular model, the Abhidharma. And Jeremy knows several of these titles. The idea would be there are three things that we can do as part of our regular practice. One, which we talked about yesterday and saw today, is to meet everything with mindfulness. If we could be mindful 24/7, and again, a tall order, especially since we all have these little things called default mode networks that make us drift away from the present moment. If we could be mindful, then all of our unwholesome seeds, when we pay attention to them, would become weaker, and all of our wholesome seeds would become stronger. So that's the first part, is just to meet everything with mindfulness. And by mindfulness, I mean paying attention as deeply as you can to the mental formation or the moment, and being able to pay attention specifically to what's happening in our body, a little bit what's happening with our thoughts, but mostly what's happening in our body. The second thing to do would be to practice negative emotions. And this is, I'm not going to talk much about that today, but one of the things that he says is, since they're so hot and so unbelievably difficult with their insistent energy, that we often get carried away with our anger or fear or despair before we actually get to the idea of being able to deal with it. But he says we should water our positive seeds. And watering our positive seeds is by far, I think, one of the most productive practices that we can do. So going back to just ordinary everyday meditation, Thich Nhat Hanh has said in several of his books that if you are starting to meditate, starting a meditation practice, and you're not feeling joy, then something is wrong with your practice. And I think he's talking a little bit about how often so many of us, and I know this was true for me when I started to meditate, that just paying attention to your breath and just releasing that tension in the body was enough to say, wow, this is great, this is felt with joy. But I haven't really found that to everybody. And I think people have their own individual practices. So as an example, we tell people to sort of sit and follow their breath and just be still. And I ran into one person who had been the subject of rather coercive timeout processes when he was younger. And many of you, even if you've been parents, or even if you don't know your parents, you know about this whole thing about when people are misbehaving, you give them a timeout and you take them and have them be still someplace. Except his parents were a little bit over the top and would make him still for hours, which was an inappropriate way to use timeout. And here I was as his instructor saying, well, the first thing I want you to do is be still here for a long period of time. And of course, that just led to a lot of anxiety. Thich Nhat Hanh also at one of his retreats was asked by somebody, you know, Ty, I can't really do sitting meditation. And I just can't do it. I tried and tried and tried. And Ty said, don't do it. Find other ways. So I think that one of the things that we get caught up a lot of in Zen traditions is a lot of sitting meditation. And I'm finding that it's very powerful for me and powerful for many other people, but it's not the only way to be. And it may not be the best way to be an entry level thing. So the idea that we often hear about there should be joy in your meditation is we say, well, let's just start meditating and watch for the joy to come up. But for many people, it feels like a slog, doesn't it? I mean, it really feels like, oh, just one more thing I got to do, you know? I got to take out the garbage, got to floss my teeth, I've got to do the sitting meditation. And they have that problem. My recommendation would be find something that is ordinarily joyful and relate your breathing to that. Everybody can find something joyful. So if instead of doing sitting meditation, you wanted to spend, say, 10 minutes petting your cat and following your breath and feeling how that feels, that moment of joy, that would be wonderful. In many things, for example, in the Jon Kabat-Zinn idea of doing mindfulness-based stress reduction, the first thing they start with is eating. So maybe you feel a lot of joy of eating some wonderful type of food, or maybe your cup of coffee, you sometimes can just kind of feel that wonderful taste, aroma, and what it does for your body. And I would say that starting practice, besides just trying to do sitting meditation, is to find something joyful. Find something joyful and pull it into your breath practice. I think that that's really one of the important ways to kind of get going with this. Because, you know, this is a vibrant, wonderful, joyful practice. Even getting back to, let's see, maybe if I can do another share screen on the 5 skandhas. Do I have the 5 skandhas here somewhere? Yes. I think these are all things that you can kind of sit with. You may sit with, and very, very many people, including the Buddha, has a whole sutra saying it's important is to deal with form, which is your body. Just being with that and feeling whatever kind of joys are going on there. But anything is just, I like it. My favorite practice over the last 4 or 5 years has been feeling how I like and dislike stuff and noticing that. Especially noticing how I cling to the things I like and push away the things I don't like, and kind of having that sort of thing. Perceptions, and notice how you feel about your perceptions, these treasured kinds of ideas that you have, and really kind of enjoying a lot of those sorts of things. But also notice how you push away, and mental formation and consciousness. I think any of the 5 skandhas are a good way to kind of start to do meditation. And in particular, kind of finding joy. There is I'm going a little bit out of our tradition here right now. There is a person who has been spending a lot of his career writing about happiness. And his name is Rick Hanson. He wrote a book called Buddha's Brain, which I think he needs to update. Actually, he did update. He wrote a book called Neurodharma, where he talked a little bit more about that and talk about the neurologic parts about this. But as many of us have known, and we talked a little bit about it in the first 2 days, we have this negativity bias. We have this great dialogue in our head about how bad things are. We're always feeling in threat. We have this survival physiology leading us by the nose, and we're just unhappy with that. And so Rick Hanson has a particular way, and I'm going to send a handout on this so that people can kind of go with that. It's a practice that's called Hardwiring Happiness, that is also has this wonderful mnemonic called HEAL. And I changed one of the letters, and I'll tell you my own particular point of view on that in just a little while. So the first part of the H is to have a good moment. Have a good moment, no matter what that is. You may have to remind yourself to have a good moment, or you just may notice it. Some old friend calls you from out of the blue. You find out that Kopp's custard has your favorite flavor today. There's so many little things that go on, and just to notice without that sort of way of being, and to have that. People have talked about how good moments and good feelings are difficult to hold on to. The feeling, the story, and I don't think it's just Rick Hanson that says this, but he says this fairly frequently, is that our mind is Velcro, sticky for bad events and for bad thoughts and for the way that we kind of go, and Teflon for good thoughts and good events. So what we're doing here is trying to, I guess what I would say, rough up the Teflon so it's stickier. So it's H-E, the E stands for enrich, meaning that whenever you have a particular event, pay close attention to it. So I'm looking out my window if I want it, and this is a good event for me. I really enjoy doing this. If I want to make this more formal, I'll notice the green of the trees out there. They just put a brand new blacktop just this morning on this parking lot that I'm looking at, just to see, wow, that just is an amazing thing. The shadows of the trees, the blue sky, and noticing it, really, really noticing it. The more detail you can do, I can remember that it was a Thursday, I can remember that it was a morning, and kind of go that way. And the second thing so that's enriching, really trying to kind of figure out that detail. And then the A stands for absorb. And once again, we get back to that great teaching of the body. Feel it in your body. Feel how things feel. Just let it be. And the body is really the important reservoir of our particular memory, and kind of go that way. The second, the fourth thing, which he actually, and I mentioned it in passing only to say that I did something different. He puts L as the fourth, H-E-A-L, heal. And he has that kind of idea that the L stands for link, meaning if you have an episode where you might link something to a thing that you see, it's a theme of suffering in your life. So for many of us, and I'm one of those people, have a little arthritis after years of wear and tear. But if I can have an idea that I'm not having that particular arthritic pain, or if that arthritic pain is in my left ankle, which it usually is, I can have my right ankle and feel the good feeling about that and kind of embrace that. So there's lots of ways that we can use that L part of it. And you can read about this more. He has a whole book about this, Hardwiring Happiness. But at the risk of being a little bit presumptuous and kind of modifying his thing, I changed the L to an R and stood for record. So what you can do is, if you have, and to seal it in, I also, one thing I didn't mention about absorbing is, I have a particular thing, I put my wrist together. That sounds odd. And the only reason I do that is because it doesn't mean anything else to me. But I actually do that to help absorb and seal in that thing. So you may have whatever else you may like to do. You may rub your ears or say a particular word, amen, for example, just to kind of help seal in these positive things. But as human beings, we've also been given the idea of language, not spoken language, but recording things. So I suggest that when you have some positive events, you may just want to record them. These are my index cards. I have 100 or so of these things that are in my life. And whenever I need to do a sort of positive exercise, I shuffle them and put them together and just kind of turn them over one by one and feel how things felt in my body at those particular times. Some of the cards have things on them like loving kindness, compassion, no self, all these kinds of things that also make me feel in great connection to others. And so I kind of do that practice because recording it has helped me. Recording, I can't depend on my memory because my memory is still going to be a little Teflon-y. It's still not going to go towards those sorts of things. So this is a practice that I call index card practice. And just as an aside, it was a practice, you know, I think I've told this to other people in my class. I steal from everybody. I have no original thoughts. Everything is stolen from somebody else. That a mindfulness practice called Heart Map has things called Rolodex practice, where they talk about gratitude and remembering events. And you're supposed to have a kind of a mental Rolodex to go through. As I was teaching this class on Rolodex things about 5 or 6 years ago, a graduate student from Marquette, I think she was about 22, raised her hand and said, "What's a Rolodex?" So in the modern times, we can't use that term. I use the index cards, and they're also so much better because I can shuffle them up and not have a particular order. When I actually was doing this or the Rolodex, I would know what comes next, and now I don't know what comes next. So this is one, and there may be many, many ways that you do that. You may have a bell of mindfulness that allows you to sort of see what's going right at any particular time. So watering these positive seeds, the truth of well-being is important to know. But sometimes, and this really happens a lot to people who have things like a bad event happening in their life or depression or that sort of thing. Sometimes you can't find those things. I like to think of the wonderful idea that Thich Nhat Hanh, my very first book I read by Thich Nhat Hanh was called Pieces Every Step, and it's got a dandelion on the cover, and the dandelion is related to this particular story. He was talking about one of his friends. It was not his idea. Had this idea that he was rather having a very difficult day, was despondent, was sad about things that were going on in his life. And although Thich Nhat Hanh was telling him to smile, he couldn't really smile. But he said, the dandelion has my smile. Somewhere in our consciousness, the dandelions of our consciousness, we have these sorts of things. And even at times when our despair is great, when really bad things have happened to us, we can know that the dandelion has our smile, that the other parts of our consciousness will come to the fore and we can use them. So however this works for you. Oh, and the other thing is, sometimes you can just ask people to help water positive seeds. Or you can get a lot of joy watering positive seeds in everyone. But left to its own devices, even if you are a good practitioner at dealing with the neuroses and getting rid of the fear and anger, you're just going to have brown patch of dirt until you water the positive seeds. So I wanted to end my talk here with one really wonderful poem that has become that has been one of my favorite things to talk about. Thich Nhat Hanh telling us that we all can do it. The good news. They don't publish the good news. The good news is published by us. We have a special edition every moment and we need you to read it. The good news is that you are alive and the linden tree is still there, standing firm in the harsh winter. The good news is you have wonderful eyes to touch the blue sky. The good news is that your child is there before you and your arms are available. Hugging is possible. They only print what is wrong. Look at each of our special editions. We always offer the things that are not wrong. We want you to benefit from them and help protect them. The dandelion is there by the sidewalk, smiling its wondrous smile, listening, singing the song of eternity. Listen. You have ears that can hear it. Bow your head, listen to it. Leave behind the world of sorrow and preoccupation and get free. The good news is that you can do it. My dear friends, one of the things I want to leave you with in this retreat, and not just in this retreat, however you practice, I like to encourage people, is that this idea of enlightenment, this idea of awakening, is not a rare and uncommon event. You do not have to practice in a cave for 20 years before you get enlightenment. Many people get it right away. When you have done something and have not done it in the reactive way, when you have had the angry thought and you want to lash out and you don't lash out, that's a moment of awakening. That's a moment of enlightenment. Many of these things are possible to us all the time. And so I want to give that kind of encouragement. You are all enlightened beings. In the Thich Nhat Hanh tradition, especially those people who have the more go to these kind of wonkier retreats, there is a bow that people do when they want to speak. It's called they usually say something like "Dear Thai" or "Dear Teacher," and then they usually say "Dear Beloved Sangha." And the first thing I used to say was, I realized as people started doing this, that absolutely Thich Nhat Hanh is my teacher, and I have a tremendous amount of gratitude, but everybody is my teacher. You guys are all my teachers. There's teachers everywhere. So I've expanded that, and whenever I have that sort of thing, I say, dear teachers, dear beloved teachers. And the other thing that I've come along to say is, instead of saying beloved Sangha, although I like my Sangha and I like the term, I like to realize they are all enlightened. You are all enlightened beings. And I sometimes use Steve Lowry, who was one of the people who passed away last year. has just had such a wonderful, wonderful open heart, always used to say, dear noble ones. Sometimes I'll see your dear noble ones, but dear enlightened. You're all enlightened. It's really great. You are all Buddhas. You're all Buddhas. Isn't that great? I mean, you're hanging around with a bunch of Buddhas here on this screen. We don't always know it. We don't always manifest it. And certainly I have as many problems with manifesting that as all of you. But we have it. It's right here. We can touch it. And watering those positive seeds is definitely one of those ways to do it. And I feel that people work very hard and they do a very good job on watering those negative seeds. We need to water the positive ones. Smile when you breathe. Really appreciate the great amount that we see among other people and in the world. Open up to your life. Cherish it. Really live a beautiful existence. We, like I say, we are designed as human beings to live on this planet and to experience joy. Let's see if we can do it. So thank you. So dear friends, I am open now to any kind of questions or comments that people might have. Anything at all that might have come up, either from this talk or from the previous talk. Anything at all. So you, and since my screen can't get everybody in that, if you might want to use the raise hand function on the screen there, if you can. So. Colleen, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Paul. So you had said meeting the moment and trying to be aware of I'm meeting the moment with mindfulness. Mm-hmm. And then I heard you say that one way I would know I'm meeting my moment with mindfulness is to take in how it feels in my body. Mm-hmm. So just to go a little further with that. So let's say I got a text from someone that was very disappointing to me for whatever reason. And I could feel the disappointment and sitting, for example, on my heart. That alone would be an accomplishment to just be aware enough of remembering to note how it's feeling. It seems like a good start. And then what? Now you've given us a number of examples of practicing well-being. But is there anything else to say about once, for example, we notice it in our body, how to stay mindful?
Yeah. Thanks, Colleen. Good question. Well, the first thing is I'm glad you put it in that way instead of saying you were feeling disappointed or making it a little bit unusual. Yes, feeling it in your heart. You may have to actually say, you may have to add in your mind, I had this feeling of coldness in my heart or heaviness in my heart. And then maybe other things like my arms and legs feel really heavy or my mouth is dry or any of those things. And quite frankly, that's enough. And the reason that it's enough is because as you pay attention to that, you will water that, you will change that seed of disappointment, which has come into your consciousness, into your mind consciousness, so that it returns to the store is now returned to change. And that's the whole process. And it doesn't happen like immediately, like right away that there's this big thing that changes immediately. But as the time goes on, when you continue to practice time and time again, that you will find it starts to soften and become less urgent and less of a problem for you. You're able, you have tools now. You can handle this. You don't have to go down the pathway of reactivity. You don't have to get a text from somebody and then immediately respond back with a text like, what the heck are you doing? Why did you send me this text? You can decide to not do that. You can make those kinds of decisions. And you can also sort of change, again, how those sorts of things go on. This is a very tried and true process, but it's a slow process, and it doesn't happen after the very first time you do it. I like to say that when you have a moment like that that shows up, the next moment of disappointment will only be 99% as strong. It doesn't sound like much, but when you get opportunities to practice, it eventually goes that way. So paying attention is really all you need. And I guess what I would want to underline is there isn't any real reason to analyze it. I mean, you can if you want, especially if you're paying attention to thought. But I think that the insight that happens comes merely, it bubbles up anyway at wherever it's coming from. So you don't need to go into an analytic thing. Paying attention to what's happening in your body and perhaps thoughts is all you need to do. That's all. There's nothing more. It's a very simple process. And yeah, so that's how that kind of goes. And you stay with it until you need to not stay with it anymore, which sometimes may be just a few minutes, but sometimes might be a few hours, just being as present as you can. So thanks, Colleen. Was that helpful? Gus or Joanne, I don't know which one.
Okay, there, I'm muted. Yeah, I was in another practice developed by Dr. Abraham Lowe of Chicago. And there's some parallels of what he said, like about smiling, you know. And one of his recommendations is to cultivate an inner smile. And it was a nice phrase. And so just by you talking about this, it brought that back to me. And so I'm glad to have that back again because, yeah, with a lot of things going on, it's easy to overlook things like that. So that was one of the things that he advised, and this is a parallel to today. And another thing that he says is really not to take ourselves too seriously. And there's times we go overboard with that. So appreciate it.
Thanks, Gus. And however you cultivate that inner smile, I think the best way to cultivate the inner smile is to cultivate an outer smile. It's very easy that way. But absolutely, one of the things that our discursive mind, our things will go on will say, that everything is so important. And when, you know, I believe that the theory that A, don't sweat the small stuff, and B, it's all small stuff is a better way to kind of be with it. So allowing ourselves to just, you know, be with the moment is the best way. So let's see, who else has a hand up here? Shanta, there you go.
Previous couple of years ago in your class, you mentioned about when you're driving, you should turn off your audio and enjoy the view. And you know, I haven't turned on my audio at all. I have been having wonderful time even driving and enjoy the view and other things. I just want to mention, I'm very thankful what you told us.
Yes. So yes, so what we're appreciating, and I think what we're trying to appreciate is this idea of unitasking. In lots of parts of our society, we have become multitaskers. It's not only multitaskers, but it's also considered to be a badge of honor to be a good multitasker. And I think I can go into some studies if you wanted to, that doesn't work so well from the standpoint of getting things done. But even if it did work towards getting the things done, it certainly isn't a way to be happy. And so trying to be one moment. So like I say, if you find somebody that they can't find joy in their sitting meditation, but they can find joy in something else, looking at a flower, petting their cat, whatever, those are the ways to kind of go. So thanks, Shanta. Let's see, who else do we have here? Chris?
I'll turn it on before you tell me to. Going back to the concept of, watering other people's seeds, I think sometimes it's difficult for us to ask others to water our seeds.
Yes.
And we know what a gift it is when we water someone else's seeds. So it's interesting how we don't apply that same feeling, that same concept by allowing others. And I think when we find ourselves in need, as maybe some of us have lately, what a joy it is to really come across just the concept of service. Service isn't necessarily giving or paying or doing that. It's a sense of mutuality between two people. So that's something I've really focused on, is allowing other people to give and serve and feel joy from it.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I absolutely think that is one of the failings of being human beings, is we don't ask. It's hard for us to ask for help. We're always willing to help others, but we're very seldom and it is really true. It's an odd thing to say, but I have said this to people, including my partner Jane, who's been very good about this, is, I need my positive seeds watered. It sounds really odd and peculiar if you hear that as part of a snippet of a conversation, but sometimes we need to have that done. Sometimes we need to have our positive seeds watered. And asking for that can be a difficult situation for us to do that. We're generally pretty good about giving help. We're not always good about asking for help. So, let's see who else is here. Gary.
Yeah, hi, Paul. Thanks for everything. Just a comment on smiles more than a question. There are a couple of muscles in the face that when we smile, there's a feedback loop between these muscles and the areas of the brain that have to do with these muscles. And that feedback loop is reinforcing itself so that when we smile, we're more likely to smile more. But in addition, it feels good to smile. It helps reduce our sense of stress. And it's a powerful message to other people. When they say smiles are infectious, they are infectious. Other people are more likely to smile. And along Chris's idea of accepting from others, one of the things to accept from others is their smile. So just wanted to say that there's a lot of neurophysiology that is involved in a smile that is really powerful.
Thanks, Gary. I think that's one of those things that I like to tell people to do from the standpoint of, like, if you're in your average, Walgreens as an example, and you see people and you're passing by them, just smile to them. And people always say, well, they'll think I'm kind of odd or weird. And I want to say, well, that's just your ego talking. Who cares if they think you're odd or weird? You're more likely to connect and make that sort of thing. And I've certainly seen people who have really appreciated the idea of just some stranger giving them a little kind word or a smile. Very easy. I mean, we think about doing these dramatic things. We're going to go out and, we're going to, open a food bank, or we're going to organize a march for whatever, et cetera, et cetera. Sometimes it's the very easy, simple things we do in our lives that cause, as Gary was mentioning, smiles are contagious. good acts are contagious. Kindness is contagious. And we just need to kind of, like I say, give up on that idea, I think, that we absolutely, that people may think we're odd. Well, I don't care. I mean, so people think you're odd. So what? It's not like they're, going to do anything about the fact that you're odd. Maybe you ought to sort of accept the fact that you are odd. That's okay. And see what we can do about that. Lynn Smith?
Yeah. Thanks for the suggestion about finding joy in the meditation. And it reminded me, last year I was taking care of my twin sister's grandson here. He got to stay a couple nights. And the second night I was like super exhausted, because it was go, go, go. And I'm like, I'm going to do a little mindfulness, breathing at the end of the day. Because he was so hyper, he couldn't get to sleep, and I'm just like ready to crash for 12 hours. So anyway, we laid down and I'm like, Miles, let's just pay attention to our breath. Put your hands on your tummy, feel it go, your hands come up and down as we breathe, and let's count our breaths. So we started doing that, breathe in 1 and breathe out 2. And he's like, Grandma, that's really boring. That's just so boring. I'm like, okay. So then I thought, he was holding his stuffed animal, the monkey, and I'm like, okay, let's hug the monkey 1 and let go 2 and hug the monkey. I mean, in 4 counts, he was out like a log. So it works with kids too. The mindfulness practice that they enjoy, find it. Yeah,
Thanks,
thank you.
When I was doing developmental behavioral pediatrics, which I did for the last 10 years of my medical career, about once a month or so, I would run across somebody who was having anxiety and was there to figure out what sort of psychotherapist or what medication I might recommend. They were coming to me, MD, they're looking for medication. And I would say, maybe let's just try to breathe first. And I would just teach people to breathe. I would just teach kids how to do conscious breathing. And a lot of these anxious kids took to it like, a duck to water. They just thought, how come no one ever told me I could do this? I'm so upset, I'm anxious about my math test. Whoever told me that I could breathe and I would feel better about this? So it's a very simple thing, but it definitely works even for the very young. So, Bonnie or Dick, I don't know which. Bonnie, thank you.
Talking about smiling, I was thinking very much about the fact that we are not seeing each other's smiles, that if we're behaving as we should be right now, we're wearing masks when we're out around people and walking through Walmart. The hope would be that you would be meeting other people who have masks on. And one of the things that I have found I have to be more intentional about is that although they can't see my smile, I can still do something else I can say hello, I can do another kind of greeting because I can't rely on my smile to make that connection. But it's easy, I think, with the mask on to kind of, go inside a little bit too much and to stop being aware of other people we meet. But it takes a different kind of effort these days.
Thanks, Bonnie. I think I'm getting aware of people with masks is that your eyes smile when you smile.
Yeah.
And so that's, if you can kind of pick that up, that sometimes helps. So is there anyone else? Am I missing anybody? I got to make sure I get to the next screen here so I'm not missing anybody. Any other comments or
just FYI, it's easier for women to smile than it is for men.
Really?
Of
Yes.
course, one other thing they've got over us. Great.
Paul, I just wanted to speak to Bonnie's issue and your follow-up on that. Living where I do on the east side, I walk all the time and I see so many people and most everybody's in masks. I have never seen people, it's a pattern now. They respond to you through those eyes. You see, I agree with you, Paul, you see so much through the eyes, but not only that, where other people tended to sometimes just walk past you, they don't anymore. If they walk around you because maybe they aren't wearing a mask or they are wearing a mask, I just find there's much more acknowledgement of the other now than I've ever seen before. And those eyes, you know, you see those little slitty eyes, whatever they look like. But you know, there's a silver lining. I always say, wake up and find the silver lining today. And to me, you know, we just now smile in different ways. And I think that smile that I'm seeing from people penetrates around and maybe just at a deeper level.
Thanks, Chris.
Sure.
Any other comments today? Colleen?
I just wanted to add that not long ago I saw on television that there's somebody, I don't have the address online, but they manufacture masks and you take a picture of your smile and you send it in and then they'll send you masks with your smile. Some thought it looked a little creepy, but I guess it just depends. But anyway, there's an option out there if you wanted to just carry that expression. So.
That's really funny.
Well, thank you, Colleen, for that. As a little bit of a preview for tomorrow, we're going to talk about the ideas of self and other, and the idea that all the kinds of things that we do are contagious. The idea of smiling and good actions and all those other sorts of things. So certainly, we're all in this together type of thing has come about, I think, a little bit more since you see people wearing masks and everything else. While before the pandemic goes, yeah, we were all in it together, but nobody really paid attention to that. And everybody was more about going out. So I think that it may be that the pandemic, as awful as it's been, has watered seeds of compassion in people. And that's not an insignificant thing. So, thanks. Ro, did you have something, or were you just?
I did, but I think we're out of time. Are we stopping at 11?
We'll take you. You're the last one. You have the final word. It better be good.
Oh boy. So I just wanted to mention, there's actually, because of Gary's comment about women smiling more or easier, whatever that concept is, that there's actually a book out about by a woman that's called Stop Telling Me to Smile. And it's a book in response to her experience of, walking by men on construction sites who would be, yelling to her, how come you're not smiling? Or, doing some kind of cat calling. And basically, so her response to that. But I wanted to say, I really enjoyed the, what you referred to as a chant that was read by the four folks this morning on non-duality. The reason, what came up for me was this idea that, we struggle with one side or the other. We can be happy, it's not enough, happy, then we get sad. It's too much sad, then we want to be happy. It's just like this constant turmoil of kind of trying to balance or wrestle with these polarities within us. Well, the other day, a week or so ago, I was in traffic on the corner of Oakland and Locust. And I didn't realize that the car in front of me had actually bumped into the car in front of it. And so I was like third car back, and all I knew is that these cars were not moving. So I just tooted my horn which I don't often toot my horn, but you know, we were supposed to be moving and we weren't. Well, I didn't realize I was actually behind an accident. And when I tooted my horn, this woman got out of the car in front of me and, you know, yelled some pretty powerful words against me for having, she was a woman of color. And I was blown away because I was in this whole happy mode, you know? And all of a sudden somebody just came and like popped that bubble because I tooted my horn and I was blown into this other, you know, reality. And I have to say, it took me several hours to kind of cool out. But then I like, how I worked it was to actually become her. Now that might be too much analysis, but I had to understand what her feeling was. She had accidentally bumped into somebody else. This guy was already out of his car, looking at his fender, you know, starting to question whether or not he was going to call her the cops or whatever was going on. I saw none of it until, you know, she woke me up that she was under stress. And I was so glad she was expressing herself so vocally to me against me being kind of like, oh, because she was just under stress. And I liked the authenticity of her stress. I didn't like, you know, like start swearing back to her. But anyway, I just bring that up because we're in these, you know, we have these expectations or hopes that we can be more smiley or more, you know, in tune or experiencing more, whatever. But that balance, I think that we're really ultimately hoping to engage with is, you know, it requires you having the relationship to both sides and to feeling compassion for both sides. That's my experience. Thank you.
I'd say that was a good last word.
That was a good last word. So, dear friends, before we ring out, I just want to mention a few things a bit relating to the practice. So at noon today, we are going to do walking meditation at a place called the Rotary Arboretum. Those people who are in town or close on the east side will kind of know where it is. If you know where the Mindfulness Center is, just head west until you can't go anymore. If you actually go into the Milwaukee River, you have gone too far. So stop before you actually get into the river. But many of you may want to do walking meditation today if you're not close to where we are in solidarity or whatever. But walking, the physicality of the practice is really important then, especially in the Plum Village tradition. Tomorrow, we will not have a Dharma discussion group either. We'll have sort of a closing ceremony, which will consist of a little bit of singing, kind of an open area to share. And then we have something, we'll recite the 5 mindfulness training, but we'll also have something called dedicating the merit. And dedicating the merit is a way to acknowledge people who have recently died or who otherwise are having difficulties. And then we chant the Heart Sutra in response to that. So that's what's going on tomorrow. And I'm kind of encourage people to maybe get their schedule. So if they would like to stay for that wonderful ending that we usually have, the actual ending that we have on our Christine Center retreats, we can't do, which has been hugging meditation. But we can do the quality Zoom hug as well. So we hope to see you all. We hope to see some of you in about an hour, but we hope to see all of you tomorrow if you can as well. And thank you so kindly for being such a wonderful group to be with. Practicing with Sangha, the way of awareness gives rise to benefits without limit. We vow to share the fruits with all beings. We vow to offer tribute to parents, teachers, friends, and numerous beings who give guidance and support along the path.
Thank you so much, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.